Hey, football fans, welcome back to the Football Radio Show. Casey Mallon here with Dave Hewitt. We are rolling through the NFL division by division, giving you a 2013 preview. Next stop, the AFC South, and we're going to start on the bottom with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They finished with a 2-14 record. That wasn't good enough to let Kevin Costner keep his job. He's out of there. Gus Bradley comes over from Seattle. He's the new head coach there. We know he's got the defensive background, but Dave, let's start it with the offense. Jacksonville, one of the worst offensive teams in the NFL last year. So if you can't score touchdowns, and they only scored 25 on the year, I bet a lot of those dudes don't have jobs this season, at least not with the Jaguars.
Yeah, that's right. They needed some change. Obviously, the coach is part of that change. But in terms of the offense, man, they've really switched out these skill positions here. Out the door, it's basically their running backs and fullbacks and some wide receivers. Rashad Jennings, Jalen Parmalee gone. Greg Jones, Montel Owens gone. Laurent Robinson, unfortunately a disappointment for them with the concussions there. Mike Sims-Walker, man, that guy is a mystery.
What happened to that
Fell
dude?
off the planet, really, basically. And they bring in Justin Forsett, who was really not a huge factor, I didn't think, in Houston, but I do think he has talent. He had that one Thanksgiving Day miracle, which could have been reviewed, but wasn't. And they also bring in Mohamed Massaquoi out of Cleveland. So, essentially, they're switching things up. Obviously, it wasn't working last year. Big question still remains, who's going to really play quarterback? Who's going to really step up, Chad Henne or Blaine Gabbert there? I like some of the skill position guys that they've got. Cecil Shorts, I thought, is showing that he can be an NFL player. And then Justin Blackmon, if he can be consistent and take that next step, I think he's going to also be a huge plus for this team moving forward.
Yeah, you know, they brought in Laurent Robinson, paid him that big money, and you mentioned the concussions, and never really got it going there. Justin Blackmon facing the suspension, that's not good. He's going to miss 4 games. Cecil Shorts, he was a surprise last year. It was a fantasy darling, especially late in the season there. But also, they lost Mo Jones-Drew, and you know this offense was bad because he was still their leading rusher with only 414 yards, Dave. That is never good.
Man,
2 years ago, the leading rusher in the NFL.
Yeah, and I know that very well because he was my fantasy back then. That really cost me dearly. One other guy I want to mention here, OW. That stands for what, Casey?
Offensive weapon, baby.
That would be Denard Robinson out of Michigan, former quarterback. He will be playing wide receiver or the X-Man position or whatever you call it. But it's very interesting, and there'll be some wildcat with him. They'll get him the ball in 6 different ways, so we'll see how that pans out.
You know, and I'm not too sure about Chad Henne. I think we know what he is. Blaine Gabbert, we need a bigger body of work. With all the injuries last year, I'm not sure who could have made this team go, so he's got at least another year, but hey, we mentioned Gus Bradley coming in, so if you don't get it done this year, Blaine Gabbert, you're probably gone, but they also spent that top draft pick on getting some protection on that offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. 2nd overall pick, Luke Joeckel. Certainly, we expect him to be a solid guy for the next decade, so hopefully Jacksonville has got a guy there that they can build that line around.
Now, let's go ahead and move this over to the defensive side of the ball. They weren't bad on defense. There was times when they couldn't stop the run.
Yeah.
And with that offense, as bad as it was, this defense was just on the field way too much. But they did move a bunch of bodies out, and they brought a bunch of dudes in.
Yeah, major overhaul on that defensive line. I'm not even going to get into the guys going out the door, but a bunch of guys coming in the door. Defensive tackle Kyle Love, Senderick Marks, Dedrick Brandon, and Roy Miller, as well as defensive end Penel Egbo. So just a huge switch over there. Obviously, this team needed some fresh blood to be infused in there, and that's what they're doing.
And they got to find a way to get a pass rush, dude. Only 20 sacks on the year. That's not happening, baby.
Yeah, nowhere near enough. They also did some work in their secondary there. They move on from Derek Cox and Rasheem Mathis, who is a 10-year guy, and they bring in Marcus Trufant. So obviously Gus Bradley's got a new thing going there, new flavor, new vibe, and he has no allegiances to anybody that was on the roster as he comes in the door.
You know, the one thing these Jags do have going for them, those kick-ass new helmets and that little Jaguar. He looks tough, baby. I like it.
We'll wait to see what those helmets look like in action. That is a weird double-color thing there going on, but we'll see. Okay, Casey, let's go ahead and move this thing on to the next team in the division. It was the 3rd-place Tennessee Titans. They came in at 6-10 last year, Casey, and obviously a lot of their success is going to ride on the development of the quarterback, Jake Locker.
Much like Gabbert, we still need a bigger body of work from Jake Locker to see what he's actually got there. There are some nice weapons on this Tennessee offense. Kenny Britt has some ups and downs. He's looked phenomenal at times, has some trouble off the field. He's got to get it together to become that star player. I see some of that potential in him, but he's just got to put everything together there. Nate Washington, he's been pretty solid there. And then Chris Johnson, I know that they had a ton of problems with the offensive line last year, and at points I was just like, this dude is not working hard. But it was a late game. I don't really remember the opponent, but we saw him running hard, and I was like, all right, this dude hasn't given up. Even with the team that's kind of down in the dumps, he was still giving the effort. So Chris Johnson, I think, is going to have a bounce-back year. They get the guard, Chance Warmack from Alabama with the 10th overall pick. He's in camp now. If they get that line together, which I think they will under Mike Munchak, then this offense has the potential to do something, but it is going to come down on Jake Locker's shoulders.
Yeah, no question. He has to take that next step forward, but it would really help if there was consistency with that ground game. Munchak is a former offensive line coach. They basically shuffled out 5 centers, and they bring in a bunch of new guys, got rid of all their guards essentially too. And they brought in some new running backs. It's not going to be all on Chris Johnson. They bring in Sean Green from the Jets. He's a bigger guy, and so they're looking for him to pound away. And Jackie Battle was a sort of a workman-like kind of back there, but he's a pounder. So they're looking to embellish that run game. That's, I think, basically the single thing that they want to be able to do moving in this next year, run better, and that will help Jake Locker.
And they did draft Kendall-Wright out of Baylor last year. He showed some signs, too. That could be a deep play, big-time threat for these guys. They just got a lot of question marks going in. So I think it's probably going to be a pretty long season for the Titans, but at least we think they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit better this year. All right, moving over to the defensive side of the ball. Dave, a ton of turnover for these Titans on defense as well. Holy smokes.
Yeah. Yeah, basically that front seven really reworked. A lot of guys out the door there. Ledger Douzable, Senderick Marks, Dave Ball, Pernell Egbo, Jarius Wynn, all gone. Linebackers Xavier Adibi, Zach Dials, Kevin Maslett released. Linebacker Gerald McGrath gone. I mean, this is just a serious turnover on defense. And obviously, they're looking to bring some fresh blood in here. One of the big signings would be strong safety Bernard Pollard, a leader, and I think he's trying to bring his leadership style, going to infuse that and try and bring the team with him.
Dave, we're in the lower 20s when it comes to defending the rush and defending the pass. That's why so many of those guys are gone and no longer with Tennessee. But you got to get that fixed to actually start climbing up some steps to be a better team in the league, much less in your division. All right, Dave, this AFC South, we had 2 pretty bad teams, and then we had 2 pretty good teams. We're talking about the Indianapolis Colts. They came out of nowhere last year to go 11-5. They went to the playoffs. We knew that Andrew Luck was going to be an awesome quarterback. We just didn't think it was going to happen so quickly. Indianapolis, a little bit of different look here. Obviously, Chuck Pagano was out most of the year last year fighting some illness. Bruce Arians kind of led this team offensively to the playoffs. Bruce Arians is now the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, but Dave, we still think the needle is definitely pointed upwards on these Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, Casey, I mean, Ryan Grigson basically hit a home run with his first draft there. Andrew Luck was the no-brainer part of it, but the 2 tight ends, Fleener and Allen, then a lot of guys that just really contributed later in that draft as well. T.Y. Hilton, Levon Brazil at receiver, Vic Ballard at running back. I mean, it just seemed like they hit on all of those picks. Yep. You know, I think they've done a great job following that up in this offseason here as well. They bring in QB Matt Hasselbeck. I think this guy's a huge plus. He's going to be a quarterback coach, and he's going to be a huge addition to this team. Hopefully he doesn't play a snap, but what I like is what he brings is the leadership, and I really think that's going to be a huge plus. They also bring in, who I like quite a bit, Ahmad Bradshaw. He's still a young ascending guy, and if that foot can get right, then this guy can produce, and that'll really bolster that ground attack for them. They really needed to get better at running the football.
Yeah, no question about that, and I think Bradshaw is really going to help in that department. They do have some nice young running backs on the squad, but that was definitely something that needed work for these Colts. But now the defensive side of the ball, we know that's where Chuck Pagano has made his living there. Gone are a couple of the guys that have been there for a long time. Dwight Freeney. Chaja.
Go Chaja, yeah.
So it's going to take a little bit of an overhaul there. Robert Mathis is still there. But you could see the way they were playing a little bit better towards the latter games of the season, but they got to be able to stop that run.
Yeah, the ground defense there, not good enough, and that's definitely going to be an issue when Houston's in your division, and that's the team that's in front of you.
And plus, dude, looking, with Mo Jones-Drew coming back and Chris Johnson, they're up in those lines. There's some running backs in this division, baby.
Yeah, you really better get better. I guess that's probably one of the reasons they were so bad at stopping the run. They do bring in nose tackle Abreu Franklin, who's a big body guy, as well as nose tackle Ricky Jean-Francois. So maybe those guys help stop the run, as well as free safety Laron Landry, who is a big, strong dude. Also, strong safety Tom Zbikowski, who is a pretty good run stopper, too.
I really like the direction that these Colts are going. Like we said, Andrew Luck, dude, he's only going to get better and start making even better decisions there. And they've really got that offensive line dialed in. If they can get that running game fixed, get that defense to stop the run, these guys are going to be in the playoffs for several years.
Yeah, and like you said, the change at coordinator should increase the passing percentage.
Pep there.
Little Pep Hamilton there. Maybe just a little more consistency out of the quarterback. It seemed like as great a season as they had, they would mutter around for a handful of quarters there and finally turn it on. We want to see a little more consistency out of that O. Okay, let's go ahead and move it over to Houston. They won the division the last 2 consecutive seasons. They went 12-4 last year, and they look to take that next step and really be a Super Bowl participant or winner. This team needs to take that next step. I guess a lot of it would fall on the shoulders of the quarterback, Matt Schaub. They bring in another offensive weapon for him to help hopefully balance out that passing game opposite of Andre Johnson.
Yeah, they drafted DeAndre Hopkins out of Clemson. This guy is fast, and he's plugged in as the starter opposite of Johnson. A lot of people say Andre Johnson lost a step. We're going to see if he can play a full season, which has kind of been an issue for him here of late, the last few seasons. If he can and DeAndre Hopkins can develop like they need him to, then you got some pretty dynamic playmakers right there. They get a lot of production out of the tight end positions, especially Owen Daniel. That guy's a stud. And the running backs, we know about them. Arian Foster, he's been one of the best in the league the last 3 or 4 years here. The average per carries come down a little bit, but I'm not too worried about him because they also have Ben Tate right there behind him. Yeah. That's a great 1-2 punch there. And then Matt Schaub, he got his first taste of the playoffs last season. 2 years ago, he was hurt, didn't get to participate. Last year, like I said, got a little taste, didn't perform all that well. But that's kind of how these teams go. You get there, you take a step. And like you said, these guys expect to be in the hunt for the Super Bowl at the end of the season. You move it over to the defensive side of the ball. Got to start at the top with J.J. Watt, one of the best defensive playmakers in the league. This guy is unstoppable. They are going to get Brian Cushing back. He got that chop block. Took him out for the year. They changed that rule. I'm so happy that they did that because there's no place in football for that. It's just a shady play, clipping guys like that. He's going to back. He's going to be a big contributor. But I still felt like the rest of the league caught up to this defensive scheme towards the end of the year. It seemed to happen when Wade was in Dallas first year. They did great, kind of came back to the pack, but there's still a ton of playmakers here. And they added maybe the best safety in football.
Yeah, I think that part of that decline towards the end of the season had to do with some of the injuries they took, and specifically in that secondary. Obviously, bringing in Ed Reed, a 9-time Pro Bowler, will have a positive impact if that hip is good to go. Hopefully, he won't miss too much time, and I think he's just going to basically show up for game 1 and start being Ed Reed. That should work out for them pretty well. They also do steal from the Raiders, one of the best punters in the league, in Shane Leckler. We don't talk a lot of special teams, but this guy, he is a damn good punter, and he'll change the field. Let's just say one thing, not a lot of turnover on this team.
Yeah, Dave, they did move a handful of players out of there, but overall kept that core intact because this is a pretty damn good football team. I expect good things out of them. I like rooting for these guys, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there in the AFC South. Indy chomping at the bit, trying to gear what the Texans have, and Texans trying to take that next step, baby, get to the Super Bowl. All right, that is going to do it for our AFC South preview. Coming up next will be the NFC West. You do not want to miss that, and you don't have to. FootballRadioshow.com has you covered. Hey, and remember, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at FootballRS. For Dave, I'm Casey, FootballRadioshow.com.